Nine's chair, Peter Costello, has now resigned after a disgraceful incident where he pushed a reporter from the Australian to the ground. Now, if you somehow missed the moment, which has been broadcast around the country, here's a quick recap.
Well, you've got to answer the questions, Mr. Costello. Don't. You've just assaulted. Don't. You've just assaulted me.
Behind closed doors, Costello was facing pressure to resign after that brutish display was caught on camera. But publicly, Nine's PR team was denying anything had happened at all. They released this statement. After arriving at Canberra Airport, the chairman was confronted by a journalist from the Australian. In the course of filming, the chairman, while walking backwards, the journalist collided with an advertising placard and fell. At no point did the chairman strike the journalist. So what changed at Nine? Well, as the ABC's Peter Ryan pointed out, Costello resigning was humiliating as it showed his own statement could not have been correct.
We had been expecting this was possibly likely to come out even late on Friday evening. Remember, this is a long weekend, so this is an announcement from Nine Entertainment on the Sunday of a long weekend. But given the events of last week where Mr Costello had that altercation with Liam Mendes, a reporter for The Australian at Canberra Airport, there's been a lot of speculation that this appeared to be imminent. But overall, this is a major humiliation for Peter Costello because as late as Friday last week, he had rejected suggestions that he had assaulted the reporter from The Australian, Liam Mendes, and he brushed off suggestions that he should resign or was under pressure to resign.
Well, Sophie, let's bring you in here. Great work by The Australian, getting that footage and then covering the story. The thing that I'm interested in is how the story evolved from a PR point of view and how Nine went from this steadfast position that nothing had gone wrong to eventually he has to leave the organisation with that rather long-winded statement that he gave. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think this played out pretty quickly because that imagery and that video with the journalist Liam Mendes did go viral, and it was an awfully shocking look for Mr Costello. And I think a lot of people were left thinking, OK, he looks like in that video he has barged into him, knocked him over, stood over him, laughed at him and then marched off. So it was an incredibly bad look for the chairman of a media outlet who employs hundreds of journalists, and some of them work for programs that do exactly that. So I think Mr Costello thought that he could hold on to his chairmanship, but obviously this quickly changed over the weekend when he lost the support, what appears to be definitely from Nine. There were very critical articles of him, very critical article of him this week in the SMH in their editorial. And I think it was just untenable, that's what I was being told, for him to hang on to the chairmanship. So the footage spoke for itself, and I don't think he was going to be able to worm his way out of it, and clearly that was the case.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And Steve, keen to get your thoughts here as well, but I would make the comment that the publishing arm, the SMH, they did a pretty good job of pushing it out really quickly, even though obviously the ownership structure meant that he was their chair. But the thing that really stood out to me is that they had somewhat rejected the statement from Nine's own PR team, and it was really buried down the bottom. It's not what they led with, which then goes into the credibility of what statements are actually being put out. But what are your thoughts?
Well, look, my opinion on this is probably unpopular because I don't think Peter Costello should have been forced to resign over this. And I hate this kind of journalism where you bail people up. It's like when the media scrums chase somebody out of a courtroom looking for a comment that's never going to eventuate. I think it's poor journalism. I know it's what's done, and I know that Channel 9 are guilty of it too. I just think it's got to stop. There's better ways to do this. But let's be fair about this. The old Fairfax arm of Channel 9 wouldn't be particularly enamoured by by Peter Costello being their boss. They weren't fans of his when he was in Parliament, and they probably weren't fans of his before the merger. So I'm not surprised that the SMH and the Age and that part of Nine went after their boss. But look, given the media furor that erupted after this, I think his position did become untenable, and he did the right thing and stood down.
Yeah, very, very good point.
But Steve, how do you do these? Can I just interrupt, Jack?
Yes, go for it.
How do you actually get answers from people? We were chasing Mr. Costello for weeks. We were repeatedly asking him questions. And so it does take that if you email them, call them, contact them, you go through their spinners and you get nothing back, it results in journalists having to doorstop them, having to approach them when they probably don't expect them to, because otherwise you get no response. And it might be a type of journalism that people do not like, but sometimes it does take this type of journalism to get the answers that we deserve. So, Steve, respectfully, I do disagree
Sophie,
with you on that.
you still didn't get the answers. You still didn't get the answers. You still didn't get the answers. That's the point.
But he did not.
So, I mean, what did it achieve? Chasing him through an airport.
He did not handle it well.
It's a good point. The other thing, though, is that Costello was the chair of a company that did profit off that style of journalism, and his guys at Current Affair played it just as hard as anybody. And if he wanted to, he could have done a cultural change to not have that kind of focus. So I think that when you're in a certain position, you do know what the game is, and that's the way that I look at it.